This is an excursion about Android security. What is special with Android? What is special with Android mobile phones? Both Google and Apple issue monthly updates. Monthly updates for Android and iOS, and you know the updates are important to make exploits of vulnerabilities impossible. So as an average, Apple supports their phones for 4 to 5 years. So for example, iPhone 5S released in September 2013 still supports the latest iOS version 11 with all security patches. If we look to Android, then it's more difficult. Then difference is compared to iPhone, the Android-based systems come from very many different manufacturers. And the different manufacturers behave in a different way. So each manufacturer has its own customized Android-based firmware for a smartphone. So to give the people the possibility to recognize, to have some special gimmicks or others. So each manufacturer modifies the basic operating system, the Android system, in the firmware and comes with an own version. This makes a problem for security because Android security patches that come from Google, Google is a provider of this Android operating system. Every such patch needs to be integrated by each manufacturer independent in their firmware. And typically, once a warranty, it's about 1 to 2 years, is expired, the manufacturers are no more interested in supporting old smartphone models. They want to sell you a new one. And what they do is they often do not provide adapt and update for such older version. There is no lifetime or no service lifetime defined by law. So they push people by no more supporting older models, and older means 1 to 2 years old. So this is really a problem for security. How you can check whether your Android phone is up to date. Here in case of Google Pixel. You have to go to the settings. In the settings you have to select System. When you go to System, you have to go to About Phone. And then About Phone, there are different information. And to see the update situation, you have to go to Android security patch level, and then you can see the actual situation of your Android phone. What to do if your Android phone is not supported anymore? First advice is buy a new smartphone every 1 to 2 years. This is a problem with the waste, but it could still be cheaper than devices from Apple over time. However, it increases the volume electronic waste, and such smartphones are able to work longer. Another advice is select a smartphone with having a longer service lifetime. Because in this longer service lifetime, the manufacturer is forced to provide updates of the system to do not run into problems with such things. So you select a smartphone with a longer service lifetime or longer specific update period, which is offered by the manufacturer. The provider of the Android system is Google, and Google itself sells smartphone. So in any case, the security update provided by Google for Android, of course, can be immediately used for Google smartphones. Google smartphones, for example, Google Pixel. What should you do if your Android phone is not supported anymore? Regularly follow security news and check whether a mitigation without a patch is possible. And there is an example we discuss also in our course update. That's a stage fridge vulnerability. You should definitely, to avoid attacks on the basis of this stage fridge vulnerability, you should disable auto retrieval of multimedia MMS. And you should install the latest version of Firefox. Then do not use any app other than Firefox, calls and SMS, because other apps allow also this accessing multimedia data, and then via such a media file, by such a multimedia message, an exploit can be transported to your smartphone and automatically started there. Then you should check if an up-to-date version of a Lineage operating system, this is an alternative firmware for Android phones, is available for your smartphone. But to install this needs so-called rooting. And the routing, it's a little bit dangerous. Let's have a closer look. To install some special things, you need root access. So smartphone rooting means that the system is hacked, the smartphone is hacked, to gain root or administrator rights on the software, on the smartphone, and then, for example, to install an update. If such a smartphone routing is done, the users get administrator right and can also pass these rights to some selected applications. But here one should be very careful. Very careful, because important security mechanisms are broken when smartphone routing is done. Usually, only the core components of the operating systems have administrative rights. When, after in smartphone routing, also other apps have administrative rights, a hacker can exploit vulnerabilities of such an app with root access and then get access to root privilege themselves, and then they can attack any other app or any other thing in the smartphone. So user with root privilege can still install non-critical apps that do not require root access. So if you decide to do such a smartphone routing, and you are able to think about and specify the right privilege, then one should be careful and install apps in such a way that they do not require root access. Routing opens also many other possibilities. So for instance, one can install alternative versions of Androids. These are so-called ROMs. One can easily install security updates. One needs no more to wait up to the supplier, up to the manufacturer needs an adapted version. One can change the user interface. One can modify the performance. One can, for example, install a Lineage operating system. So after routing, the user has more possibilities to control the operating system, to control the hardware, to configure things, or to have influence, for example, on the performance of the CPU. So the CPU can be over or underclocked in order to improve performance or to reach longer battery life. But be really careful. This can lead to multifunctions of the mobile phone. For example, if you increase the CPU performance, then system can become hot. So better control is possible after rooting. It becomes possible to install, remove system components. It's possible to install updates, to modify writes. But it's really important that you give, if possible, only root privilege to a very few trustworthy apps. Simply to reduce the number of system components with root privilege that may be attacked, that may be easily attacked by the attacker, and that gives the attacker the possibility to get rights to modify your system and to do some changes. I already mentioned the dangers that are connected with this rooting. So process of rooting itself can damage the whole device. After that, device behaves like a brick. You can nothing do with it. Sometimes it's possible to reanimate the system, but sometimes it's damaged forever. If you do this smartphone rooting, then warranty does not work anymore. Because it's also possible, after rooting, it's possible to change hardware settings as soon as you have root privilege. And then you can increase, for example, the processor clock frequency, which can lead to an overheating of the mobile phone and destruction. So rooting is not a recommended option for users with no in-depth knowledge on these areas. You can cause more damage than to do useful things. One has possibilities to influence authorization, the App Store access, so for example Google Play Market, the root privilege. So there is a lot of knowledge needed to behave in a way that really helps you to improve your system by means of this rooting exec. So this you need to remind, rooting is always on your own risk.